Hello, my name's Paul Anderson, and on this journey, Dougal and I will be heading west from Aberdeen to the village of Tarland, where we'll join a session at the Aberdeen Arms. Much of the way we'll be following the old Deeside rail line, which closed in 1966. We'll be meeting a few local characters, hearing some interesting tales, and finding out a little about the music and song of this beautiful part of Scotland. We start our journey in Aberdeen, the Granite City, and with a population of around 211,000, the third largest in Scotland. The area around Aberdeen's been settled for around 8,000 years, and under the now bustling city are the remains of prehistoric villages which lay around the mouth of the rivers Dee and Don. King Robert the Bruce granted Aberdeen the status of royal borough in 1319, and he also founded Aberdeen's Common Good Fund, which is still in use to this day. Aberdeen's traditional industries are fishing, papermaking, shipbuilding, and for many years the city's main wealth was based on the export of hides to the continent. However, since the discovery of oil in the North Sea, Aberdeen has become the oil capital of Europe and has enjoyed a considerable degree of affluence as a result. Bon Accord is the Aberdeen city motto, and before we head out of Aberdeen, we're going to visit the grave of James Scott Skinner at the Allenvale Cemetery. We'll be hearing more about Skinner later on when we visit Banchory, but in the meantime, we're going to hear one of his best known tunes, The Bonnie Lass of Bon Accord. The North East has a long and well-documented heritage of fiddle playing, which continues to the present day. The area has given us generations of fine players and composers, but what is less widely known is that a tradition of violin making existed alongside the playing tradition from the middle of the 18th century. Robert Duncan and Joseph Ruddiman of Aberdeen were amongst the finest violin makers in Britain, and Bill McGregor, a fiddle repairer and restorer, is helping to keep the traditions alive. We're going to meet Bill at his home at Banchory Devnick, on the outskirts of Aberdeen. Hi Bill.
Hello Paul, how are you doing? Nice to see you again.
Good. Got some fiddles, let me see.
Oh, I'm sure we can manage to let you see something. Come away in. Well, Paul, I say I've been at this restoring the fiddles for probably 27 years now. It wasn't something actually that I ever envisaged that I would be doing. It was just sort of through accident, as you'd say, that happened. And it was probably the result of our neighbour, Jim Rendell, who was an Arcadian, very well known local fiddler, who lived just across the road from us at his farm. And he came across one day and asked me if I would fix his fiddle. And I naturally said to Jim, well, I can't do this thing, I can't fix fiddles. And with me in a background of cabinet making, that type of thing, he felt that, well, if I can do that work, there's no reason why you can't fix my fiddle. So anyway, we set about this and we got his fiddle fixed, and he was happy with that. And then it went on from there. He came back another day with another fiddle, and this went on for quite a number of weeks until I must have restored about 20 odd fiddles belonging to Jim Rendell. Now I didn't know what he was going to do with all these fiddles, but anyway, that was the start of it.
Bill, have you got any fiddles that we can look at the inside just to see if the inside of a fiddle looks like? Have you got any handy?
Yes, that's no problem, Paul. There's one actually here that I have. Now this is a a fiddle that's been on the way to being restored. This is an old fiddle from the way back about the early 1800s. And we've now got to open up the fiddle, and this is the top that we speak about. And this is the sides here, all the way around here, and this is your blocks that keeps the fiddle together. And this is the back of the fiddle here, which I'll just show you. And the back and the sides and the top, they are made from maple. And then this is the top, and that's made from pine. And we have here the bass bar, and the sound post will go in here when the tops.
And this sound post, does it make a vast difference if you was to shift it over a couple of millimetres? Would it sound completely different?
Yes, there is actually an exact place actually where to put it.
When you've got the bridge on across here, there must be a tremendous pressure bearing down on the actual belly of the fiddle when it's strung up.
Well, this is the other thing. Your sound post actually helps as well, actually, because it's through the bridge and through the sound post that creates the sound. But that's quite a nice fiddle. So if you want to maybe have a shot of that one,
get a diddle.
You maybe need to tune it up.
The River Dee is one of Scotland's great salmon rivers, and at 85 miles in length, it's one of the longest. The source of the Dee is found at 4,000 feet, high up in the side of Brewing in the Cairngorms, and it flows through some of the most beautiful scenery in Scotland. It's not hard to see why Queen Victoria and Prince Albert chose the Balmoral estate on the banks of the Dee as their summer home, a tradition which the royal family carry on to this day. The Royal Deeside Railway Preservation Society was formed in 1996 by local rail enthusiasts, and in 2003 work began on reopening a section of the Deeside line between the Milton of Crathis and the outskirts of Banchory. The original Deeside line opened on the 8th of September 1853. Initially, it only went as far as Banchory, but the scheme proved so successful that by 1866 the line was eventually extended as far as Ballater. The intention was that the Deeside line would carry on to Braemar, then up over the Devil's Elbow and down into Perth, but it's said that Queen Victoria's desire for privacy meant that the line never went beyond Ballater. Although the Deeside line was amongst the most picturesque in Scotland, it was mentioned in the Beeching Report, and it closed to passengers on the 28th of February 1966. It's ironic that shortly after the line closed, oil would be discovered in the North Sea, and that it would most likely have enjoyed a second lease of life. It's maybe a wee bit cliched, but it's maybe the most appropriate tune to play on a train. The Orange Blossom Special. Impressed, Dougal? No. Yes. It's just bra. Well, this is the end of the Milton Across this Deeside line. We're going to head into Banchory now to hear a bit of James Scott Skinner, the Strathspey King. We've arrived here in Banchory on Royal Deeside, just about 20 miles from Aberdeen, very near the spot that James Scott Skinner, the Strathspey King, was born. He was one of Scotland's greatest musicians and composers, and we're going to head down to the museum now in Banchory to have a look at some bits and pieces of his life. It's a great display, so we're going down to that. James Scott Skinner was born in Banchory on the 5th of August 1843. He was a legend in his own lifetime, and during his highly successful career he performed for Queen Victoria, he played at the London Palladium, the opening ceremony of the Royal Albert Hall, and published over 600 of his compositions. He was the first Scotsman to commercially record music, making over 80 recordings. He toured North America, performed in practically every town and village in Scotland, and in 1925, just 2 years before he died, he was still top of the bill on 5 UK concert tours. persecution of supposed witches was widespread in Europe from medieval times, but nowhere was this as severe as in Scotland, where 3 times as many witches were executed as in England. Although the use of torture to obtain confessions was forbidden in England, it wasn't in Scotland, and around 1,700 mainly female victims were burned at the stake. We're heading up to Craiglash in Glassell to hear about just one famous Deeside warlock. This is the Great Stane of Craiglash, where the famous local warlock Colin Massey of Glendy used to practice witchcraft with a coven of witches, who were all local women, such as Margaret and Isabel Ogg, Janet Davidson, Margaret Clark and Helen Rogie. And in the late 1500s they were accused and tried, 1596-97, and sentenced to death for such serious crimes as burning waxen images of people or uttering diabolical spells against folk, which apparently brought on death or such like horrible things. As we could see to this day, it still obviously had some importance to modern day folk. This symbol was here when we arrived. I have no idea what it means, but I don't think I'm going to hang about much longer to find out, so we'll just head off. The hysteria in Scotland was partly driven by King James VI, who had a fanatical fear of witchcraft. He even wrote an influential book called Demonology, which warned of the reality and dangers of witchcraft and demon worship. Many of you will be familiar with the weird sisters from William Shakespeare's play Macbeth. However, the murdering usurper of the play bears little resemblance to the real 11th century Scottish king. The real Macbeth was born around 1005, the son of Finlay, the Earl of Moray. He was also grandson to King Malcolm II of Scotland, and so had a very real claim to the throne. In August 1040, Macbeth killed the weak and incompetent King Duncan in battle near Elgin, and he was crowned king. His reign was actually marked by 14 years of efficient government, law and order, and the promotion of Christianity, and he's even known to have visited the Pope in Rome. By 1057, Macbeth was fleeing north to his Morayshire stronghold, but after a running battle through the How of Cramar, his small force was cornered near Lumfannon, and he was killed. This is the Macbeth Well, just outside Lumfannon, and just right aside the old Deeside line. There's 2 stories about this ancient well, both linked to Macbeth. Now, the first being that the day that he was killed in his final battle, that he'd stopped for a drink here as he was being pursued and run in battle by the forces of Malcolm Canmore. And he'd stopped for his last drink here before being killed about a mile further to the north. The second is that Macduff, who'd killed him in single combat and cut his head off, had taken his head to this well and given it a wash before he took it to Malcolm Canmore. We'll never ken definitively if any of that stories are true. They might both be true, maybe both things happened, we'll never ken, but it's an interesting historic story all the same, so we'll move on now. Go on in. He was originally buried by an old cairn on the battlefield, but his body was eventually disinterred and taken to Iona, the hereditary burial place of Scottish kings. He was the last Scottish king to be laid to rest there. The Deeside Outdoor Activity Park at Des is a local business success story, yet it was founded during a period of great difficulty for the Scottish farming industry. We'll hear more from Ken Howie, a local farmer and owner of the park. Well, Ken, we're at the Deeside Activity Park. It's quite a departure for farming for you. What was the initial inspiration for setting this place up?
Well, Paul, there's no doubt necessity is the mother of all invention, and that's exactly what we've got here. Returns from agriculture have been poor for quite a number of years, and the final straw was the foot and mouth outbreak in 2001. We were already doing bits of activities at the farm, but clearly we could have no visitors come to the farm at that time. We couldn't sell any livestock off the farm, so we had zero income for quite a number of months. that really was the inspiration for starting the activity park.
And when did the park actually open?
Yeah, well, we opened for business in June 2002, and we've kind of progressed ever since then. We're up to about 40,000 visitors now from our original idea that we might only entertain about 10 or 12,000 visitors.
And what kind of activities do you kind of offer the public when they come here?
Well, all the traditional ones. We have a fishing loch, well stocked with fish. We do the clay shooting, target shooting as well. But we've included things like quad biking, like kart racing, like 4x4 off-road driving. The archery range, of course, is very popular. And more recently, the axe throwing, which we imported from Scandinavia.
Okay, well, I think we should maybe go and I'll look at some of the activities, if that's all right. We're here at the Deeside Brewery on Royal Deeside with Rob James, who's the owner and brewer of the Deeside Brewery. Just to ask him a wee bit about one of Scotland's newest breweries. How long have you been trading for?
Well, the company itself's been trading for over 3 years, although we actually only moved to this new site at the turn of this year. So really we've only been going since April 2009.
Mm-hmm. And how many types of beer do you produce?
We actually have 7 brands, although some of those are seasonal brands. So for instance, we only brew certain things in the summer for summer ales, or we have darker, stronger things for the winter.
And how long does it take to produce a brew?
Roughly it takes 4 to 6 weeks depending on the actual beer itself. So the brewing itself only takes 1 day in terms of getting it from being malted barley into the fermenters, although thereafter you have to let just nature take its course. So fermentation's roughly 4 days, cooling down's about 4 days, and then it goes into the cask and it's another 2 to 4 weeks before it's ready to go to the pub.
And what about did they sell your beer?
Well, you can get it all over the northeast of Scotland, and we're starting to spread our wings further, so we go as far as Inverness and the Black Isle to the north, and we go to Dundee and Edinburgh quite regularly as well.
And where do you get your ingredients from? Are they local
some of
products?
Some of the ingredients are local. We do use aphid oatmeal in one of our beers. We also use local raspberries in our summer beer. We also use whey from a local cheesemaker in another, which is a kind of speciality dark beer, and it's very rich and creamy because of the whey.
Now, Rob, it's in here, what sort of stage is this at just now?
Well, this is where we actually convert the starches into sugars, so we've actually run off everything from here. This sits like a big porridge for about an hour and a half, at which point everything in the barley becomes sugary, and we move that into the next vessel. Everything that's left behind, this is the draft that's going to go to the beasts, but essentially all the most of the goodness has been taken out of this.
And does that go to local farms?
It goes to a local Aberdeen Angus herd, and they seem to really enjoy it.
They're thriving on it.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for showing us about.
That's okay. Thank you.
Aberdeen Angus cattle are internationally renowned as one of the finest beef breeds in the world. And it was just over the hill, near the village of Afford, that local farmer William McCombie of Tillyfoor developed the Aberdeen Angus breed from Doddies and Humleys, the indigenous black cattle of the northeast of Scotland.
Yeah, Paul, I don't need to tell you much about Aberdeen Angus cattle, but this bull, well, he's getting on now. He's almost 8 years old. There's his offspring, sons and daughters, around about the farm. It's bred really well for us, actually, and he really is, even though I say so myself, a very good example of the Aberdeen Angus breed.
And so, for somebody that doesn't care about beef cattle, Aberdeen Angus, they're world renowned. It's probably the finest beef you can get. But what would you look for in a beast to define it as, well, that's a cracking example?
Yeah, well, one of the most important things to maybe the novice is that you look at an Angus bull like this, and the most noticeable thing is it's got no horns. And one of the reasons that they were so popular throughout the world was this fact that they have no horns, and it's a genetic trait that's very much sought after, because you use an Angus bull like this on any other cow, even a Texas Longhorn, and the calves will not have any horns. So that was really one of the most important things. And it was only after that they found that they had this particular quality of meat, whether they're fed in the hills of Deeside here, or the pampas of Argentina, or the outback of Australia. That traditional good quality beef seems to come through almost regardless.
Now we've seen the beasts themselves and the hoof, and this is obviously the kind of finished product. What are we actually looking at here?
Well, Paul, this is a traditional grass-fed Aberdeen Angus beef, and if we look at it here, this is a fairly typical loin, or the sirloin, of the Angus. A little bit of fat cover, very, very important. A little bit of marbling through the meat here, which is really important. Possibly the bit that some housewives don't appreciate, but that's the tasty bit. And of course, not enormous, not hanging over the side of the plate, a little bit smaller. Good things come in smaller packages.
Well, I'm looking at this, it's making my mouth water. I think we'll go and try a bit.
Come on then.
Okay. Well, we've taken a fair bit of a detour to come to this kirk here. This is Migvie Kirk in Howe Cramar, and it's a wee bit special, quite unexpected, but I'll wait for you to come and see. Come on, have a look. Well, the kirk here at Migvie has been like this since about 2001, and that was when it was finished. It was the brainchild of Philip Astor, who was the laird at Tillicrony Estate. He had the idea, after it had fallen into quite bad disrepair, that he would turn it into a kind of sanctuary for contemplation. And I rather like what they've done with it. I think it's quite striking. It's got an amazing acoustic you could probably hear, hence the reason I brought my fiddle. So I'll maybe play a tune for you just to let you hear what it actually sounds like. The Muir Dinnet Nature Reserve consists of extensive birchwood, heathermoor and wetlands, and the lochs, Kinnaird and Davin, provide winter homes for thousands of geese. The reserve has many interesting features such as abandoned settlements dating from the Roman period, a crannog and an ancient Celtic cross, and it was here on St Andrew's Day 1335 that Sir Andrew Murray defeated David Strathbogie at the Battle of Kilbloin, the turning point in the Second Scottish War of Independence. This is the spectacular Burnavat, which was formed at the end of the last ice age, thousands of years ago, by glacial meltwater. And it just carved out this thing, a bit like a washing machine. You can see this is actually half full of gravel. It's just filled up with stuff that's been washed down over the centuries. But you can see this would be just like a vat, the top to bottom. We can only see the top half. And you can see the burn here takes you right through. And they've got a cave at the back. Now I've been coming here since I was just a wee laddie, and the story was this was Rob Roy McGregor's cave in here, and they used to hide out for the redcoats up in the hills. But it turns out it wasn't actually Rob Roy McGregor, it was a kinsman of his called Gilderoy McGregor, who had been brought to this area by the local farmers to sort out some cattle lifting. But he turned out to be a bigger problem than the cattle lifters, and he started lifting cattle himself. He was taking blackmail for the local folk. And this is where he used to tack up his captured livestock and hide them up in the hills. This was his big hideout. He was eventually captured and sentenced to hang, and he was executed along with his band of rascals in about 1700, and you can still see the records of that to this day. So we'll maybe go up and have a wee look in the cave. So right in about here now you can get a good look at the cave. This is Gilderoy McGregor's famous cave where he used to hide out. He had to use this on a number of occasions, but it's not actually very deep, but it's deep enough you can just disappear in the back out the road. You'd think twice about going in there. The water's hell for cold, I have to say, so I think I'll get a miss today. Cambus-a-May suspension bridge was built in 1905 by the engineers James Abernethy and Company. Replacing the long-established ferry crossing, it allowed passengers on the south side of the River Dee to catch the train at the Cambus-a-May station. The bridge itself was gifted to the area by Alexander Gordon, a successful businessman who also gifted the Victoria and Albert Halls to the nearby village of Ballater. Well, just before we head down to the session in the Aberdeen Arms Tarland, I thought we'd take a slight detour up to the Queen's View, which overlooks the How of Cramar. And within this vista, which is undoubtedly one of the finest in the northeast of Scotland, we've got some of the iconic mountains of the northeast. We've got Mount Keane, the most easterly Munro in Scotland, Loch Nagar in the background, and then a bit further round Morven. Shona Donaldson is a local lass and the 2009 Scots Singer of the Year. And here she sings the beautiful local ballad, Corachree.
It happened a summer's evening, I gaed out to talk the air. And coming in by Tarland town I spied a lovely pair. And the youth was tall and handsome, and the maiden fair to see. And I kenned their destination was nae far frae Corachree. Halfway up the avenue they baith sat down to rest. He put his arm around her crying, dear, I'll do your best. A maiden ye he set and did, and I made you right to me. But a maiden you'll never walk again, neath the gers of Corachree. Oh, Sandy lad, you'll ne'er deny this thing that you hae done. My apron strings are broken, Lord, my hair flees in the wind. My maiden heders ten up recht and flown away for me. And the session clerk'll get the ken o' this thing you've done to me. Cheer up, my bonny lassie, for ye needna get big. There's money's a bonny lassie that gangs daily on the deck. There's money's a bonny lassie, I am just as good as ye. But a maiden ye'll ne'er walk again, neath the girls a corachree. Now he comes down elke evening, just as often as he can. He comes down elke evening just to see his bonny Ann. They talk that land old lang syne, for naebody can see. But you'll easy find out a' their beds neath the gars a corachree.
This handsome memorial stone was erected to the memory of Peter Milne, the Tarland minstrel, and he was one of Scotland's greatest fiddlers and composers. He was born just a wee bit up the River Dee at Kincarnaneel in 1824, and at an early age he moved to Tarland with his parents. When he took up the fiddle, he soon became recognised as a great fiddle player and earned the title the Tarland minstrel. He was described as a genius, and James Scott Skinner, who was one of his pupils, described him as the greatest strathspey player he'd ever heard, and probably the best traditional musician you'd find anywhere in the world. Unfortunately, in later life he fell in hard times, and when he died in 1908 he was buried in a pauper's grave in Aberdeen, which is really rather a tragic way for one of our greatest composers and musicians to end up. Jock Duncan is a legend within the Scottish folk scene and is often described as a national treasure. We're meeting Jock at the cottage of Cotmore near Tarland to hear about the distinctive ballad and bothy ballad traditions of the northeast of Scotland. Fan do you mind first kind of folk doing singing like a bothy ballads? I mean, I'm assuming that you probably started hearing stuff.
Well, with a lot of relations. A lot of relations. A cousin of my father was a great lad. He could fair sing. And like a Dickie and Fiddle Sutherland and all that boys, if you heard about all of them. And they used to come to the house, you see, and Willem Duffus was in the drain.
What kind of music was it that they played? Was it like a Scottish fiddle music, like a Skinner?
My father get on with fiddle music. He says, play so and so. You know, his fit went all the time. But he'd a habit of using to somebody and then they'd like God. But what a music you can do with. You know why this is come along. At Darvis parish that I can fay, I tell you that I am some way. For there is a log road I would go to the 5 lands in the morning. I'd come alone, I did arrive, a pair of horses for to drive. And elke morning up at 5, do to ca the fun in the morning. At first tonight the camels come, they all cried out, here's our new man. And to gaze at me they all begun in the 5 lands in the morning. And now I've told you clear and fair about the 5 lands so rare. And if anybody about me inquire, you can tell them I left in the morning.
So what's the main difference between bothy ballads and the kind of the older ballads? Kind of like a Millet Tifties or a battle.
Well, the rains are ancient, that's why. Bothy ballads was a thing of the meagre past. Donadeer. As I come in by Donadeer and Dun by Netherhab, hosts of 50,000 Highlanders, good marching day, hurlah ho, a dermadoo, a daddy-o, a dermadoo a day. As I come on and Farron and Dun and Bible Whyn, 'Twas there I met Sir James the Rose with him, Sir John the Graham. Oh, a dermadoo, a daddy, oh, a dermadoo, a day. Oh, did ye come fae MacDonald's men? And did ye their number see? And war ye near and yoch? But meth their number be. Oh, a dermadoo, a daddy, oh, a dermadoo, a day. I was near and yoch. And I their number saw, there's 50,000 Highlanders a marching to Harlaw. Oh, a dermadoo, a daddy, oh, a dermadoo, a day.
You diddle as well, don't you?
Oh, wee bit, eh? It was just you would dance, what do you call it, the jig time to this again. We got the dancing classes, of course, with then. Early on, when I was to school, it was 6 a lesson. And Craigie'd bike it out 6 mile at night, in the winter's night, with no heat in, wouldn't need it, there was plenty of heat with dancing. And we did and he also diddled now, you see, but he played the fiddle in it till he was driven to desperation. Somebody died in right, we gave him a chop in the head, you know, and on again, come on. And what a way. Some of that lads come back every year, feet lads again, they'd boots like, they'd feet like paddocks, we travelling in the horrors year after year, you know, but they enjoyed it. There's something to do it next. And it was a hell of a coins and lads, you know, it was just something to do. And he first took a diddle, diddle-um-a-daddy, oh, diddle-um-ba, diddle-um-a-dee-dum-do, diddle-um-a-diddle-um-a-daddy, oh, diddle-um-ba, diddle-um-a-dee-dum-do, diddle-um-a-diddle-um-a-daddy, oh, diddle-um-ba, diddle-um-a-dee-dum-do, diddle-um-a-diddle-um-a-daddy, oh, diddle-um-ba, diddle-um-a-dee-dum-do, diddle-um-a-diddle-um-a-daddy, oh, diddle-um-ba, diddle-um-a-dee, diddle-um-a-diddle-um-a-daddy, oh, diddle-um-ba-dee, diddle-um-a-diddle-um-a-daddy, oh, diddle-um-ba, diddle-um-a-dee, diddle-um-a-diddle-um-a-daddy, oh, diddle-um-ba.
Well, we've finally arrived at the Aberdeen Arms Tarland, which has long been renowned for traditional music with a long-established music session. Although there's no problem getting a dram nowadays, at the height of the temperance movement at the end of the 1800s, it was what was known as a Gothenburg pub, which means that it didn't serve alcohol. Change days. Jim Stevenson comes from a family with a long piping tradition. Here he plays the Lonach Gathering, a well-known march composed by his great-grandfather, Pipe Major Willie Grant.
Hi Jim, got a cracking tunes there, like your great grandfather Willie Grant. He was a piper in the Great War, wasn't he?
Yes, aye. He was injured in the Great War, lost an eye, and a couple of other wounds that I don't care much about.
Was that because he was piping going over the top, or?
I'm not entirely sure on that count, I'm afraid. Again, I'm researching into all this just now for a book that will eventually be taken out on the music of the Grant family, but early days. I've a lot to find out.
There's a funny story. I've been telling about your great grandfather with his glacis.
Glacis.
Can you tell us that? Because it makes me laugh every time I think
That's
about
it, like it was my mother that told me this. I said, any time sort of misbehaving, once they've been put to their bed, you can. Maybe the grandmother would come up the stairs and warn them off, can? And then it'd be like, behave yourselves. Like, nice and silent. Away they would go and back capering again, you can. And Granda would come up and go, right, can? That's my great Granda, her Granda, you know. He would just take his eye out and put it on the dressing table beside him and he goes, I'm watching you. And away he would go. They're sitting there too scared to sleep, you know. I would give them nightmares for years.
Where I come from in Tarland of Nay.
Sean Ritchie is better known in Tarland as the lead singer with the rock band Easily Led, but here he gives us a rendition of the How a Cramar, a song written around 50 years ago by the Tarland chemist Jimmy Forbes.
So here's to the whiskey we drink in the bar, and here's to the pubs in the How a Cramar, and here's to Jack Edmonds, where I've had a few, and other kind friends I don't mind if I do. Now some folk like coffee and some folk like tea, but that sort of flavor there's no use to me. You offer me tea, I'll refuse it of course. And the wife bothers you for me, it's grounds for divorce. Oh, here's to the whiskey we drink in the bar, and here's to the pubs in the How a Cramar, and here's to Bill Ross's, where I've had a few, and other kind friends I don't mind if I do. Now some folk like vodka and some folks like gin, but that help yourself, but to me it's a sin. I'll drink whiskies and brandies as fast as they come, and I'll wash them all down with a bottle of rum. So here's to the whiskey we drink in the bar, and here's to the pubs in the How a Cramar. Here's to Cleo and Roberts, but I've had a few, and other kind friends I don't mind if I do.
Thank you for that.
You're a local man.
You're a local chap. The song you sung tonight, can you tell us a wee bit about the background to that?
Well, that tune, I think I've just sung it in that bar for years, like, but never sober. Never sober, but it was passed to me. Like my brothers, they used to sing it. I had no idea for it come for a start, for a long time until the likes of yourself asked about it. And kind of found out for it come for it.
And then Father did write the words for it.
Well, it was, I can't remember his name
now.
I do.
Jimmy Forbes.
Jimmy Forbes wrote that tune.
Aye. He was a great lyric man.
Aye. Like my old man. They probably shared money a drama together.
Aye. I'm right in thinking one of the last verse, is it? The last verse was it? Is that?
Well, the last verse for my dad got the words for a lad that was buying in the old folks' home. And my old man come back with the words to give to me that I was supposed to give to you. But he added in his own verse.
Which was about himself.
Which was about himself. Yeah. It's a kind of tune that I suppose you could add your own verse if you want. It's a Tarland tune if you want to add your own verse, go ahead.
It's a real bit of local history, that.
Aye, without a doubt.
Oh well, thanks very much, Sean, that was cracking.
You're welcome,
well
sir.
Done. Cheers.
Cheers, good health.
Good health.
Here's to you.
Well, that's about it for this jaunt up Royal Deeside. I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be heading out to the Outer Hebrides, and Dougal and I will be hoofing it for the Butterlewis down to the island of Barra.